Coming to you entirely pre-recorded here from the Garage of Solitude in New York, New York. I'm Mario Francisco Robles.
I'm Brett Miro, and clip on your utility belt and get ready to stretch those hamstrings because it's episode 161 of the Fanboy Podcast.
There it is. Stretch your hamstrings. That's an interesting way to go with it, Brett. All right. Well,
that one wasn't planned out. I had to wing that
it
one.
It wasn't planned out, but honestly, I did stretch. I know it's important to have a good stretch before a podcast, so thank you.
Especially after clipping on your utility belt.
Yes, I mean, honestly. So, Brett, what have you been watching or playing this week?
Well, Mario, I'm so glad you asked. Not really related in like the normal things we talk about. I have been watching and just recently finished the first season of this new HBO show called The Rehearsal. It's with the comedian Nathan Fielder, who's like this like kind of awkward, maybe autism spectrum kind of guy. And he's just like interesting and like sometimes a little unsettling, but just like, you know, a harmless, small little man. And he just kind of does I don't know if like you want to call it like cringe humor, but that's like being reductive. And this show, The Rehearsal, was like kind of amazing. It was like this, I'll get like the setup, but then it evolves into so much more. So the whole premise is he finds people that have like something they want to do or take care of. And what he does is he sets up the scenario where they can rehearse the situation before they actually engage in it. And the lengths that they actually go. I mean, like this first guy, like they literally like, he kind of like went in there to meet the guy and then using that like had hidden cameras. So they got like a full view of his apartment and then literally built like a faithful, complete, identical one-to-one reconstruction of his apartment. And then even the host, Nathan Fielder himself, was rehearsing his meeting with the guy that was the subject of the episode of the show. But then I don't want to spoil it because like it turned into something so crazy and meta contextual and like self-reflective and with so many layers. And it was like fascinating, like this fascinating social experiment that just evolved in real time. Like you couldn't even have planned this because like this show couldn't have been made until everything was shot and done, until everything had actually taken place and occurred. Like he couldn't have planned for any of this stuff. And then I think from all that footage and what they did, he had to make some kind of through line and show out of it. And it's just, I don't know. That's like the best way I can explain it. I'm being very vague, but like, it's just weird and funky, but like, it is one of those like just very nuanced and kind of just like head scratching things. So like you have to kind of be into that and just sit down for it because it takes like these weird twists and turns. And there's like a lot of like dark, just like little humor and like the situations themselves are like uncomfortable and funny. And the people that he also picked are awkward and he's awkward too. So it's just like very like you go on a cringe, but you can't turn away. It's like one of those things. And it's, you know, nothing like gross or gory or anything like that. It's just like interesting from a social perspective. So that's very crazy. And then what I've been playing, I've still been continuing with I mentioned last week I started playing Far Cry 6. They kind of like they did like a free weekend, like play Far Cry 6 for free. So like I did and I played a little bit of it and then all of a sudden like the free weekend was over and I was like, oh damn, I kind of want to like play more of that just because like it's not even like that great of a game. They haven't evolved the series much, but I'm a sucker for just like give me a base where I can stealthily take down soldiers and just I love doing that shit. So that's like my favorite thing ever. You do that in a game, I'll probably buy the game. So they got me. I did the little tease and then they had it on sale for like $23. So I was like, all right. I pulled the trigger. I got it. And I've been like pecking away at that. And it takes place in like fictional Cuba and Giancarlo Esposito is the villain in it. And like does like it's him.
I remember
the
now
character.
you mentioned it.
Yeah. So it's fun. I kind of got into the series late, but I got in with like the fifth one in the series, and then there was like a spinoff, and now this one. That's like all I've really played so far. So you know, I know some people are kind of over it. It is a very Ubisoft buy numbers, check the box kind of game. But sometimes I like that as comfort food. I'm like, just clear the icons off the map, do the things, you know, and like check. And there's like something comforting in that, you know. So that's mainly what I've been up to. What about you? We haven't really talked to you or seen you in like forever, man.
Yeah. Well, let's see. To be clear, I spent all of last week in the woods. I spent 6 days, camping on the side of a lake. We do tent camping every summer. This is our 7th year doing it. Up there,
Nice.
there's no cell service. There's no nothing. There's no technology. I'm just disconnected from the world. So it was much needed. But so naturally, I didn't see anything last week. And then this week, I've been playing catch up with all kinds of other responsibilities that I've let slip away because you were there this past Monday. I held a celebration of life for my dearly departed grandmother, my tata, as I call her. And putting that together, as well as handling the stuff with cemetery, funeral services, everything has fallen on me. So this whole summer has been about the unexpected loss of this titan in my life, and then trying to give her the proper send off. And thankfully, that came to fruition on Monday. And thank you for coming to that, brother.
Yeah, it was beautiful, and you did a great job.
Thank you. But really, so, all of my focus has been on that. And the last few days have now been like, all right, what else do I need to be paying attention to? And it has not been video games or televisions.
Right.
I'm woefully behind on stuff. She-Hulk has premiered since we last spoke, and I know you've been checking it out.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think I should bother diving in and joining you on those conversations for next week and move forward?
Yeah, so far, I mean, the episodes are they're on the shorter side. I think they might be only like a half hour, so they're more digestible in that sense. 2 episodes in, I don't not like it. It's not like, oh my God, amazing, but it has like its own little thing kind of going for it. There's kind of like a fourth wall thing going on, which is kind of fun.
Okay.
But it's so far, it just kind of seems like the very light, snarky Marvel fare. But it's interesting, and now that they've this is what they do. Like, they know, like, okay, maybe I don't want to say like maybe the show's not that good or something like that, or just maybe that like people won't be into it. But then we got that leak, right? That Charlie Cox shows up in the series as Daredevil. So it's like, of course I'm gonna watch. He's got a new suit that's for the MCU and stuff. Like, I'm gonna watch it just for that.
Have they shown it yet? I want to see the
MCU's
too.
There's like a little screenshot. You can find, there's like a screen grab, or like an official photo they released, and he's kind of like hunched over, but it's got like a gold and red thing going on, like that old school look he had in the comics, the yellow and red. So they added, it looks like kind of like the suit from Netflix a little bit with some modifications, but there's some yellow, like this like dark yellow goldy kind of color mixed in. But again, it's not a clear shot,
Yeah.
So, but that was the thing. Miss Marvel, I wasn't really going to watch, but then I heard they uttered the M word, mutant. So I was like, well, now I have to watch the series. But surprisingly, Miss Marvel was actually very, very good.
Nice.
And I definitely, 2 episodes into Miss Marvel, I was a little higher on it than I am on She-Hulk so far. So just to put that in perspective. But yeah, it seems fun. And so far, and the second episode was a little stronger than the first. The first was kind of like origin stuff, and you got a lot of Mark Ruffalo and Bruce Banner and Hulk and stuff. But the second one seems to really be more set up for like, okay, what the show is going to be. So we'll see. I think it has the potential. I'm still going to keep up with it. I haven't been like turned off or anything. So
okay. Yeah. There's a lot of interesting television that's either just premiering or on the horizon, right? There's also the House of the Dragon, which the Game of Thrones spinoff basically like crashed HBO Max and was like their biggest premiere in like ever. So, and then there's the Lord of the Rings coming to Amazon next week.
Yeah, that I plan to really check out and get into. I've been seeing some good early buzz on like the first couple episodes, press a scene. I've heard it's kind of a slow burn, but it already, you could tell it's like building into something, and there's like already like a rising action. So that's exciting. But it might be one of those slow burn series you sit with, and then it's going to really explode at the end of the season. So that's exciting.
And on my end also, Better Call Saul has just returned from hiatus in the last couple of weeks. So I have a lot of TV to catch up on, and we're going to
it's done now. You haven't finished it, right? The finale is out, I think, right?
Wait, it's done?
I think it's done. If I'm not mistaken, the finale aired like a week or two ago.
Oh no. Okay, I really need to catch up then.
Yeah, I think you got to get on it. Watch out for spoilers, obviously, because I think I saw some floating on the internet. So
okay, all right. Well, since I haven't had any other gaming or watching stuff to share, let's get right into some interesting housekeeping if I want to do. All right, because we got a review, and I got to thank RB80 for their wonderful review that they gave us. So over on Apple Podcasts, user RB80 said, I love this show so much. Brett and Mario always deliver credible information that is insightful and engaging. Great job, guys. And it says this show is the best. That's the name of the review. So
That's very sweet.
thank you. Yeah, thank you, RB80. And we're going to be introducing some new stuff to the format here coming up in the weeks and months ahead. Just to kind of give you a heads up, summers for me are always very hectic, and every time around this year I tend to have to kind of back away from the show. But now we're entering September, where I'm going to have a lot more time to focus on making this as amazing as possible. And me and Brett have been talking about this in recent weeks. We want to start bringing in some kind of like themed episodes, something like an Ask the Fanboys episode, where it's all just your questions. And it's us going down, because you've emailed us some great stuff. There's things that always come up on Twitter you want us to tackle. And sometimes with the amount of topics we have to cover in a week, we can't get to all those wonderful questions. So we're thinking once a month there's going to be a special Ask the Fanboys episode of the show that you guys can now kind of get into the rhythm of sending us questions themed around that monthly special episode. Okay. We're also, I've always been into the idea of having episodes that go long form on a single topic. Things like, per se, like a whole episode on the Christopher Nolan Dark Knight trilogy, where we break down what those movies meant to pop culture, what they did for the character, how they've aged. For example, in other words, just like one long topic on that, or something on Marvel's Phase 1, or something, like things that just focus on certain points in pop culture history, dealing with the genres that we love so much. And we'll even start making polls that you, the listeners and viewers, can vote on. You could pick which topic you want us to cover long form each month too. So, we're thinking of some neat ways to kind of spice up the show and give you things to look forward to, because look, I love covering the current events, but I also like sometimes being able to delve deeper into other stuff. And sometimes current events aren't that exciting, but that's not
a slow
issue.
week here and there. Yeah.
Yeah. But this week is not, I repeat, not a slow news week. So why don't we get on into some of the serious stuff? We're going to start things off with the Superman on film update for August 26, 2022. So, there's a few different ways I can start here. The one specific thing I just want to address real quick is, how we heard a couple weeks ago about a headless Superman cameo, perhaps in Black Adam? Right. I've heard some additional details on this rumor, where in the supposed scene where he shows up and you don't see his face, and it's in a Black Adam post-credit sequence, the musical notes that are used to kind of like hammer it home are the John Williams Superman theme. And this is something I wanted to get into later about where Black Adam sits in like is it connected to the DCEU? Is it connected to this rejiggered DC that's coming up after the Flash? We're going to talk a little more about that, but it's interesting to note that, we've had this thing about, will Henry Cavill's Superman show up in Black Adam forever? And for the longest time, it's been like, maybe it's a foregone conclusion. It's a no-brainer. Him and Henry Cavill, they both have the same manager. They both are, Cavill's kind of part of that whole $7 Productions clique there. And Dwayne Johnson's been posting pictures with him and fan art about his Black Adam fighting that Superman. And yet, at Comic-Con, when he was asked about it, he was very non-committal. He would not say it would be Henry. He was very much about, well, it all comes down to who's playing him. And, if it's true that they're going with another headless Superman, and yet it's the music from like classic Superman, it's another indication of like Dwayne Johnson and Black Adam, not, like that whole thing, not really wanting to be connected to the DCEU. So I just wanted to touch on that, because it is an interesting thing, and kind of like, if that's true, it's a very strong indication of where that film sits and kind of what Superman we're going to be looking forward to here. I don't think it's going to be Henry. It's starting to seem less and less like it's going to be Henry. You know, because if Dwayne Johnson, who's a producer on this film, okayed using another Superman's theme as opposed to Henry's, that kind of, the writing on the wall is right there,
Yeah,
So
and we should also say that there I've also seen a ton of rumors and little like articles written that people are saying Henry Cavill did
he
come
did
back
shoot some.
and
Yeah.
shoot an alternate scene. But just, I did a little quick digging into a couple of these like kind of articles that I've seen posted. None of them are from really like credible, reliable sources. And like one, I just, for example, not to like call out any publications, but there was a post from Heroic Hollywood claiming that Henry Cavill came into alternate scenes, and they listed that their sources were this site called Geekosity. So I went to Geekosity.
Yeah.
I found the article. I read through the whole article. And it's there's not really any concrete sources or like insiders. It literally a paragraph says insiders say blah 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 and sources say, but they're not even listed. And then also kind of reading it, I mean, listen, I understand a lot of people like the Snyder films, but the Geekosity writer was like, you could tell he was like kind of obsessed with Snyder. Like he was like, there's no way they could have done what Snyder did with his masterpiece. And like, there was a lot of flowery language around Snyder. And I was like,
Yeah.
all right. Like some movies
There
are
was
fine.
an agenda here. Yeah.
Yeah. So there was a little bit of like an agenda, and it was a little much. So I'm just saying, put it out with a grain of salt. Like Mario was saying, I don't know that's Cavill. It seems like they're not necessarily committing, and there really is not a like The Wrap or Deadline or Hollywood Reporter. Like they did not report on this Henry Cavill coming in. So just keep that in mind too as we're going through everything today, really, because there's a lot of crazy shit.
Yeah, so speaking of which, let's get into the biggest thing, because this broke today as we're recording this on Thursday, August 25th. News has come out that Warner Brothers Discovery has found its Kevin Feige for DC. And it's kind of cringe to even put it like that, because
Yeah.
Kevin Feige is not the only mega producer, but still that's the guy who we compare to. There's Marvel and
Right.
DC, and we're all a bunch of middle schoolers, comparing our favorite things against each other. But yes, so Warner Brothers Discovery has found its Kevin Feige type for DC, which is something we've been talking about for many, many months here, and me for many years now.
Yeah.
This idea of DC finding that central architect, that person who seems to understand how to come up with like the grand master plan. And well, it looked like Warner Brothers has tapped a fella by the name of Dan Lin. Now, Dan Lin is an interesting guy, because he actually has a little bit of DC in his history, in the what might have been category of DC history. Because way back in 2008, Dan Lin was going to be the producer on George Miller's Justice League Mortal, that that ill-fated Justice League film that was going to come out somewhere between The Dark Knight and The Dark Knight Rises, and yet was not going to involve Christopher Nolan's Batman at all. It was going to have Armie Hammer as Batman, right, and it was going to be its own kind of thing. So Dan Lin at that time was attached to that, and then that fizzled, and we'll kind of get back to that a little bit later. And he went on to do other stuff. He produced the live, those Sherlock Holmes films with Robert Downey Jr. He was a producer on all 4 Lego movies, including that awesome Lego Batman movie. Yep. And something that's really interesting about the report from the Hollywood Reporter, Boris Kitt noted that one of the big components here that made Dan Lin very appealing to David Zaslav and Warner Brothers Discovery is that not only is he a film producer, but he also has a lot of experience developing television. Because remember, that's the thing that they really like about Kevin Feige too, that the Hollywood Reporter noted, which is that Kevin Feige not only launched the great film franchise that Disney's been running away to the bank with for all these years, but now he's expanded into television, and it's dovetailed perfectly into Disney Plus having this great crop of original Marvel content that's adds to, supplements, and works in tandem with the hit film franchise. So when Warner Brothers Discovery was looking for someone. They didn't just want a film producer, and they didn't just want a TV producer, because at some point they were looking at Greg Berlanti and stuff, and there were
Right.
rumors of that, but they want someone who has experience in both worlds. And Dan Lin had moderate success with that TV adaptation of Lethal Weapon. He also currently has that remake of Walker that's going into its third season, the Walker Texas Ranger thing with Jared Padalecki, whatever the hell his name is. And, he's got ties in the TV world and the film world. And that apparently was a very important thing on what has been referred to as an extremely aggressive executive hunt. Because David Zaslav apparently really has been serious about getting that one person. And this means also that Walter Hamada is going to be segueing out. So for the folks who don't like Walter Hamada, like Ray Fisher and others, they're going to be very happy to hear that Walter Hamada is probably going to be given his walk-in papers pretty soon. Mind you, Dan Lin has not yet signed, but it's one of those things where it seems like it's imminent. Like they're just kind of working out the details. But we'll see if some sort of snag gets hit. But apparently, if he gets the job, bye-bye Hamada. But before I get a little further into Dan Lin here, just Brett, what is your thought upon hearing this?
No, I think it's a good move. It's obviously what they want, and like you said, he's got the TV and film experience, and they definitely listen. Whether you like it or not, like I've said this 1,000 times, probably the same way. Whether you like it or not, the Marvel thing that they're doing, whether you're sick of it, you feel it's homogenized, blah 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 blah, it's fucking working and it's making money. And like, look, I am a total victim of the Marvel thing because, like I said, some of these shows they're coming out with, I'm not even that interested in.
In a million years,
but I know that there's some kind of tie and that I'm interested in. And so far, every time I dip in and I find that little connection to a bigger picture, I think it's fucking cool and it sucks me in. So it works. It absolutely works. And I also think like half the people who talk shit about it, you all fucking watch the shows anyway too. You're liars and you definitely watch all the stuff insane. So anyway. So yeah, I think it's a good move. And even if you think about even like how Kevin Feige does things and how they set up the MCU, I mean, the MCU, the movie side of things, is really just like a serialized TV production on a much bigger scale.
Yep.
So like you do need a TV guy even for the movie production stuff, like side of it. Like it is. It's just like advanced TV, 101. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I agree. So just based on his credentials, you think he's a pretty good pick? Oh, and I should add something that gave me some confidence is that his reputation around town, according to the trades, is that he works real hard, but he also is willing to, like, he knows his limits. He'll bring in experts. He'll bring in people who understand that world better than he does. And he's developed a reputation for that. Where like, I want to do this thing, but I don't know this stuff too well. Who does? I'll get that person to consult with me, So that's kind of, yeah, and that's a good reputation to have in this town. And currently, if you're going to have like a collaborative thing, right, where there's like a writer's room and there's a team of people coming up with a 10-year plan, right, you need to have someone who can, work with a team of people and not just be like, and throw his dick or his weight around and just be like, it's my way or the highway and all that.
Is truly smart people don't try to do everything themselves. They surround themselves and get the right people in to get the job done. And that's the sign of a smart, collaborative person. And I guarantee that type of person is going to get better results than the guy who just says, no, it's my way or the highway. And this is it. And I'm not listening to anybody else. Listen, collaboration is the key. Everything is better together. So that's the right attitude. And I think I read something too in the article. He might have been at like a maybe not as high a position at the time, but I think he also was like maybe like a producer or like a lower producer on The Departed. I think I saw in there.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah, so like he's got some like that movie's a banger. You know what I mean? So he's got some good stuff under his belt. And like we said, the Lego movies all were successful. They're fun movies. Lego Batman movie is awesome. A lot of people like that. They say it's like one of their favorite Batman movies. So he obviously can juggle some or get in his hands in some good projects and release some good stuff. So
I agree. And something else, something that I heard tonight, in after this news came out, people obviously started digging in and trying to find out more about Dan Lin and his, his feelings on DC. And as it turns out, he appeared on a podcast recently before this news came out. So this was just, this isn't in tandem with this announcement. This was just him talking. He was on the Ankler podcast, and he referred to, he was asked, what's the franchise that you wish you could have worked on, because he, at this time, he's connected to a lot of different ones, a lot of different IPs he's tied to, and he volunteered that it's DC. Back in 2008, he was going to produce the George Miller thing, and here's the thing I had never quite heard. He said in his own words that he was producing that, and he was going to be running the DC franchise as a whole. That was never really, I don't think that was in the headlines anywhere back at the time. Everything was
Right.
the focus on Justice League Mortal, and George Miller from the Mad Max movies is doing it. And people were talking about how is this going to relate to the Christopher Nolan thing. But if apparently if Justice League Mortal was meant to be a launch pad for a DC franchise, Dan Lin was going to be the guy calling the shots on it. I didn't know that. That's, to me, that's interesting news. And to hear him refer to it as DC's the one that got away and that he's been kicking himself for the last 14 years, it's like, well, all right, welcome back. Now's your chance. Now's your redemption story.
Well, it means he wants the job. You know what I mean? Like, that's good. He wants this job, and he's not just doing it for the paycheck or the money or for like the fame, maybe a little bit for all those things. Who knows? But it seems like he cares and he wants to be involved with this franchise. So that's like an important thing, fans. Like, like the guy wants to be there. So that should tell you something.
And he brought up in that interview too, like how it was important to him to make that Lego Batman movie, to kind of have a DC that, a DC film that was kind of in contrast to what was going on at the time too. Because remember, they're in those mid-year, 15, 16, 17, things with DC were a little wonky, and he got that Lego Batman movie out there, and that was a surefire, everyone who
that was
saw
a bright spot for sure.
Yeah. So the fact that like that was a priority to him and that he cares about these characters and he considers it if only I could have stayed on and run the DC franchise, not just produce that movie, but run it. He's been kicking himself for 14 years. It's music to my ears to hear that, he's got the job now, or he's about to get the job, and he's going to get a chance to implement some of what he had in mind there. But he's gonna have to love this job. He's gonna have to come to work with a lot of pep in his step and a lot of motivation, because he's inheriting a bit of a mess. I kind of want to just, it's such a unique thing where here's a new ownership coming in saying they want new creatives, a new 10-year plan, a new this. And yet it's going to be built on the bones of everything they've been trying to get away from the last few years. You know what I mean? Like, there's still remnants of things. The Flash is going to have the Ezra Miller Flash and the Ben Affleck Batman, and Aquaman is with an Aquaman that we met in Batman versus Superman, Dawn of Justice. And if we ever get a Wonder Woman 4, it's connected to that.
Well, we're getting a Wonder Woman 3. We know that.
I mean, that's what I meant. Wonder Woman 3, but it's like ways off.
We know that's happening. So like, and that's the Wonder Woman that we've already met already too. So all, like you said, like all the actors and the characters that we've like already been introduced to are still in play. And I don't know if like we have these for later topics, but like, we might have to jump in a little bit too, that like all the stuff now with Ben Affleck filming some extra scenes with all the, the shuffling going on, and we can dig into it deeper, and what's going on with Keaton. Yeah, it certainly, that kind of gives us some insight into, is it a soft or a hard reboot?
There's a lot of stuff at play here. And yet, like, you have a combination of like new energy coming in, right? Because in a few months, Black Adam's going to come in. And, Dwayne Johnson's been adamant that our hierarchy of power at DC is going to change forever, right? So we've got Black Adam coming in with this, big energy. and trying to kind of like pave a new road and show a new future for what DC on film could look and feel like, right? He's introducing a justice society.
Mm-hmm.
He's trying to lay the groundwork for an eventual throwdown with Superman. And even though he keeps putting it off, there's gonna be some kind of Shazam thing at some point. You can't do Black Adam without Shazam. So, he's got this thing where he's going in he's trying to give us a whole new bright future, right? But then coming after that movie comes out, you have Shazam, which is probably going to have a lot more of that new energy too, because it's coming from the same general nucleus as Black Adam is from the Seven Books production company and Dwayne Johnson. But now, after those two kind of pave a road for what DC in the future could be, after that comes The Flash. And then after that now comes Aquaman 2, because by the way, everything's been delayed. I just want to throw that in there, that Shazam was going to be coming out this Christmas, and that got moved to March 17th. And what was going to be coming out on March 17th was Aquaman 2, which is now going to Christmas of 2023. So, everything's getting shuffled around. And, listen, there are the strategic elements at play, right? March 17th was a great release period for the Batman earlier this year. And a few years back, it's also like when Deadpool did great. And it's all when Batman versus Superman came out. That February-March zone is starting to look, it's been good for Warner Brothers. It's been good for genre films in the last bunch of years. And specifically with the Batman this past March, they probably think Shazam could land in that Batman lane. And then for Aquaman, it makes sense. Aquaman was the first DC movie since The Dark Knight Rises to crack $1 billion. It did during Christmas of 2018. So I get moving it back to its Christmas slot, but like 5 years after the first, and after the DC continuity has been totally kind of like rejiggered after the Flash, it's got to be a lot of weird continuity stuff that's going to come up when they're editing these movies. Because like, what if any synergy is there then? It's like it comes like even the whole Black Adam thing, because Black Adam purports to, it's going to change the hierarchy, is going to be all this new thing, blah, blah, blah. But then the Flash comes out and resets things, and it comes out after Black Adam and Shazam. So is it going to like reset the Black Adam universe too? You know what I mean? Like listen, there's a lot of stuff we don't quite get yet, but like the point is, Lin is walking into a situation where you have a DC franchise comprised of future stars, past stars in need of new energy and a new glow, and Joaquin Phoenix and Lady Gaga doing a Joker movie that has nothing to do with anything, and Matt Reeves, which we're going to get into a little bit later, having his own standalone Batman universe. Like, there's so many different balls in the air from different continuities and different canons, and we're coming from like the multiverse frame of mind that Jim Lee and Walter Hamada and the previous hierarchy, the previous ownership was big on. What is Dan Lin going to want to do with all this? How do you make sense of all this? And I'm sure like the inclination with new owners and new vision is to come in and just say, screw it, let's just start from scratch. Let's let Black Adam be the start of something new. You know what I mean? Or whatever. With their almost $300 million The Flash movie that they have to release, they can't have a clean break, So it's just, Mr. Lin has his work cut out for him. And in terms of like, I think the biggest indication of whether or not they're going to want to do a soft or a hard reboot is what happens with the Flash movie. If they stick to it and they release that next June, then that means that they're fully cool with just kind of like soft rebooting, keeping what worked and, tossing out what didn't. If that Flash movie does actually get nuked, like Batgirl or other things, then I think the new ownership is going to treat Black Adam almost as the start of like a whole new, thing. But again, how can you do that? You have Aquaman 2 coming out.
Yeah,
I
I
don't
don't
know. Again,
know.
this is like tricky stuff. And since we're in this zone about like the continuities and stuff, so with Black Adam and the DCEU, I ain't buying. I never bought that Dwayne Johnson was trying to link to that world. Even in like, I remember when like they announced Batman versus Superman, Dawn of Justice, and the slate of films that were set to come out in the next 3 or 4 years. There was an interview with him, and they were like, so where does Black Adam fit into all this? And he was
Right.
very
I
like,
remember this.
we'll see.
Yeah.
Black Adam is its own thing, and it's still a ways off, and let's not go there.
Right.
And it's like, that's not what you do when you're excited about what's going on. You know what I mean? If he was
Right.
hyped about what DC was doing, he'd be like, oh, I can't wait to throw it,
Right.
fists with the Justice League and get involved in what Zack Snyder's doing.
He's
He
like, I'm
was
hyped
very
about my
like,
movie.
he's like, my movie's gonna be great. Let's
I'm
not
hyped
talk
about that. I
other
don't know what the
stuff.
hell is going on over there.
Yeah. And that's why, like I mentioned earlier, like I think that's been one of the things about like he probably would love to have Henry do it, but then at the same time, he doesn't like the idea that Henry's Superman has saddled with so much baggage from the last few years of the way everything has gone with him. So I feel like, he seems to be pushing for a clean break. If there's the John Williams theme and it's a headless Superman, it's once again his way of being like, I don't want anything to do with like the Snyderverse stuff, And
Yeah.
but then, oh man, because there's so much weird continuity stuff that we just touched on. Because I just looked at the next topic here that I lined up, which is about Batfleck. Because Jason Momoa, okay, a few weeks back, he posted a picture. Remember, we talked about it here on the show.
Yeah.
He posted a picture with Ben Affleck revealing that, he had shot a cameo and that Bruce Wayne is back and yada, yada, yada. But after that, in more recent times, he was asked about, DC related stuff and Batman stuff on a red carpet. And he kind of did this thing where he was trying to like stop himself as if like I'm going to get in trouble for saying this. And then he just kind of blurted out like, screw it. Ben's back. And that's it. And then he kind of like, and then that's where they left it. And it's like, okay, so he can't be referring to that cameo because he already revealed that cameo on his Instagram to millions of followers. So that wouldn't be a scoop. You know what I mean? Him revealing now saying more just broadly and as if this is like the cat's out of the bag that Ben is back. This makes me think Ben might actually be back, which is crazy to think how these last few years with like the roller coaster ride of Ben Affleck's will he or won't he, like Warner Brothers launched a whole new Batman trilogy here, and yet he might be back. This might mean that whole plan to have Michael Keaton's Batman be the one who like takes over. Maybe they said, screw it. And Ben changed his mind about being Batman again, just like he changed his mind about whether or not he wanted to marry Jennifer Lopez, because he went and did that after saying no a bunch of years ago.
J-Lo was like, go get me that bat money.
Like maybe.
He's like, you better go get that bat money.
Listen, he might have had a change of heart. The guy, he's looking great. He's got his mental health seems to be in a good place. He looks 10 years younger with the shape he's in, freshly married. The world's his oyster again. Maybe he thinks, listen, if they have a well-run franchise run by competent people, yeah, I could make I could make a few more Batman appearances. Maybe not like do his trilogy, but as that veteran Batman figure that we once thought he would be, maybe he will. You know what I mean? Because he did the favor for Zack Snyder's Justice League coming back. Now he's doing it again for Aquaman. And Jason Momoa over here is just saying Ben is back, period. Ben is back. So it's got me thinking that maybe the whole Michael Keaton thing in The Flash may just end up being something like what happened with Tobey Maguire in No Way Home, where it was just an elongated, really cool cameo, giving the fans an extra chance to see this beloved hero and this beloved role, but it's not meant to last. you know, and
Yeah,
with
like
Batgirl getting the axe, which would have been his next thing, and with Aquaman 2 now using the Ben Affleck Bruce Wayne instead of the Keaton Bruce Wayne. I don't know. The writing's on the wall that this Keaton thing may just end up being a one and done with the Flash.
yeah, and all the shuffling has just been like really bizarre. Like
Yeah.
now wasn't Aquaman before the Flash, but now it's after the
And
Flash
now it's
again.
after the
And
Flash.
like now we have Ben coming back supposedly to replace the cameo from Keaton, but also like even though Aquaman is coming out after the Flash, that doesn't mean that Aquaman, that film, can't be set before the
Yeah.
events of the Flash either. Like
That won't be
we don't even
confusing.
know the setting, and even like
Yeah.
Black Adam, do we know, is that set modern day or that's like in the
No, so
past a
Black
little bit?
Adam is going to start in like ancient Egypt
Yeah.
and then eventually go into the 1950s. It
Right. So
doesn't.
yeah, that's not even modern day. So I guess they can kind of like fudge that a little bit because it's a different
Yeah.
time zone, a time period,
Yeah.
and just like it doesn't have to cross with this. It's very, and then like yeah, like who knows? Is Keaton just cameoing in the Flash now? Was Ben Affleck's Batman gonna die in the Flash, and now he's not, so that's why he is appearing in Aquaman. It's like there's just so many questions.
Yeah.
I even just to kind of go back to one thing I wanted to add. You said the John Williams score is going to play with this apparent headless Superman cameo,
Yeah.
but is he also going to be in the Man of Steel suit? Because then that's even more confusing. We didn't even mention that.
Yeah.
Because the John Williams thing would screen, like you said, would say, okay, we're kind of separating from the Snyder thing. But if he's
Yeah.
in the fucking Man of Steel suit, then no, it's
Yeah.
not. So like it's very.
And
bizarre.
then meanwhile, when the Flash comes out, the Supergirl in that has an S. It's the Man of Steel suit. You know, the Sasha
Right, it's that
Calle's
style
Supergirl
S and texture,
is
I guess.
clearly designed. It's a riff on the Henry Cavill suit. So
Right.
yeah, I'm telling you, Dan Lin has a very busy few weeks and months and years ahead of him here, trying to figure out how to make all this make sense and make it all fly with mass audiences, when really the easiest thing to do would be like, we're just going to reboot entirely. But you can't do that with all these films in the pipeline. It's almost like it's the on steroids version of what happened with like Zack Snyder, like in the early part of the DCEU, where like they decided at a certain point, we don't really want to continue on this path, but the train had already left the station. So many movies were already like in filming or in pre-production or in post-production that they couldn't just stop. And then even when they did finally kind of like pull the plug on where they were going with everything, they still couldn't really reset because Aquaman was still, it was completely shot and they weren't going to scrap it like Batgirl. You know, it was a different hierarchy of power. So it's like, oh man, the fact that they've never been able to just hit pause, let the current thing just kind of like be over with and reboot in earnest is kind of crazy. This has been like the weirdest like reboot in motion. We're retooling it as like in front of you as it unfolds. We're fixing it as we go. You know?
Yeah. Also, like Dan Lin, like you have to wonder, like he's just like coming in now. I mean, is this like official? Like
well,
that he's in?
According to the Hollywood Reporter, they're finalizing the details.
Yeah, it's all about done.
Imminent. Yeah.
So like, you have to wonder, like obviously I'm sure there have been talks for like a little while, but like these recent changes, like this shuffle of the dates, like the extra Ben Affleck, like did Dan Lin say coming in like, listen, get this stuff set up for me as I come in because this is what my plan is moving forward? Or if they just do that and now he has to walk in and he's like, oh, you changed all the shit again in the 11th hour before I started, and now I wonder like how, if any of this is a reaction or stuff that is already the initial part of his plan, or if this is also just done in some weird fucking vacuum and now he has to come in and like it just got more complicated. I'm very curious about like how this all timed out and lined up.
And it'd be funny too, like if he if he steps in and decides, well, the Ben Affleck cameo no longer makes sense because this movie comes out after The Flash, where we've kind of written Ben Affleck out of everything and we've set up Keaton as the new veteran Batman. So now we're going to put that one back in. And the test
maybe they just have like 40 options and they're like, listen, we shot all these extra options for you, so figure out which one you want to use to like get us back on track.
They have one that's like with the CG Adam West Batman. They have one with like the animated Kevin Conroy block Batman, and they have just every variation. because they're
we
going to
we
have
ex- we exhumed the Christopher Reeve.
to. Oh, okay, come on.
That's
Come
what
on.
I'm
Too
saying.
soon. Too
Too
soon.
soon.
For me, it'll always be too soon. What's the opposite of Christopher Reeves?
Um, Christopher Leaves. I don't know.
Christopher
Matt
Walken.
Reeves.
Christopher Walken. All right. Anyway,
That
listen,
was
you took it
worse than
there.
me exhuming his dead body.
All right. Listen, Mr. Meta Contextual.
Yeah, you're metacontextual.
But listen, so anyway, going back to Mr. Dan Lin before we just move on, if this goes forward, welcome aboard. Good luck steering this ship. You have a lot of fans who've been waiting anxiously for somebody with a clue to come in there and help make a coherent plan that they could then find success with and stick to and expand from. Because, Warner Brothers has only owned DC for over 50 years already. So I think it's finally time somebody gets their affairs in order over there with DC.
If I could give one piece of advice to Dan Lin, it would be that it's not who you are underneath, but what you do that defines you.
Oh boy,
take that to heart, sir. When you're course correcting and getting this 10-year plan in place.
Yeah, and it's funny since you just quoted the Dark Knight trilogy. It seems like even the first time around, he was entering the situation where Batman is kind of off limits because an auteur is making a trilogy about him, right? He was going to make that George Miller Justice League movie, while Christopher Nolan was like, you ain't touching Christian Bale, and you're not coming anywhere near my Batman story. That's essentially where Matt Reeves is at, right? So Dan Lin, once again, is like, all right, I guess I'll work around having a proper Batman I could use, and I have to launch a secondary one. Or maybe he'll use Ben Affleck. Anyway, I can't go down that rabbit hole again. There's just too many options.
It's not worth it. It's not worth
with
it.
all the axes dropping in recent weeks over at Warner Brothers and series at HBO Max getting cut and Batgirl getting canceled, and I'm starting to have I don't know. I hope that Blue Beetle movie works out. I do.
Yeah.
With all the different things getting canceled, people were wondering. There were even rumors about Matt Reeves' future with Warner Brothers and if The Batman was safe. Well, this week we found out because, yes, Matt Reeves has just signed a lucrative deal with Warner Brothers Discovery, which makes it seem like they're like doubling and tripling down on the guy. Okay. The Batman 2 is officially good to come, as well as those two shows that we talked about a couple weeks ago. Remember, we were kind of like nervous with all the different cancellations and the change in vision for what we think DC is going to be. Would he still get to expand his little Batverse since it's in a vacuum and it doesn't connect to Peacemaker or the other stuff? But according to Deadline, in an exclusive report, that Arkham Asylum show and the Penguin Origin show with Colin Farrell are still a go. I see not Penguin Origin, but that Penguin show is still a go. So Matt Reeves is here to stay. The sequel is coming. They're paying him really well, and on top of that, I think it's also like a first look deal. So I think even
he's got a first look deal too. Yeah,
Batman stuff. Any brilliant ideas this guy has, Warner Brothers gets the first dibs at producing it. So for anyone thinking, oh, Matt Reeves' days are numbered, David Zaslav's coming for him, and he's going to restore the Snyderverse or some sort of thing, whatever you've been fed on Twitter. I've seen some crazy threads with people claiming crazy scoops.
I know.
Like, bro, that's not a scoop. That's a fever dream. But anyway, despite all those rumors and concerns, Matt Reeves is very much back and fine and doubled and tripled down upon as a very important visionary voice over at Warner Brothers Discovery. So for anyone worried about Battinson or any of that stuff, don't worry. We are all good. One thing that is not all good over at HBO Max, at least, is that animated Caped Crusader show that J.J. Abrams is one of the producers on, that Bruce Timm is linked to, that Matt Reeves himself is linked to, that we've talked about, that we've always kind of felt like this show could be the companion piece to the Battinson movies in a way,
Yeah.
in much the way that the one from the Batman the animated series kind of worked, even though it wasn't a direct adaptation. There, with the theme song and some of the feel of it, it
Yeah, the
definitely
Art
existed.
Deco look and
Yeah,
style of it
it
was very
existed in the shadows of the Tim Burton Batman.
sure.
So this Caped Crusader animated series had a lot of people excited. And listen, something that people need to understand is because some of the headlines make it sound like doom and gloom as if the series itself has been cut, but that's not the case.
Right.
What Warner Brothers Discovery has done with this Caped Crusader animated series is decided that rather than just make it an automatic HBO Max exclusive, they're deciding we're going to shop it. We're going to sell it to other networks, and we're going to see
Right.
who's going to be the highest bidder, who's going to want this prestigious, exciting Batman animated series with this pedigree of great producers and writers. And honestly, I think it's a smart move, because if you're coming in and you're looking at the shows on HBO Max, you got to be thinking about shows that are going to make people subscribe to your streamer just to watch them.
Right.
And the Cape Crusader animated series, I don't think that's a selling point where people are now deciding they're going to get a streamer for that.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And they see more of a value in having another network pay them millions and millions of dollars to be the ones to air it. And then I'm sure they'll get the reruns, and that'll be eventually where it ends up, like all the other animated DC
Right.
stuff. But in terms of like first run, it'll maybe end up on Cartoon Network or anywhere else. And it's like,
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it makes business sense. If the series doesn't look like it's going to drive your subscription numbers up, then let's see what we can get for it on the free market. I totally get that.
I'll tell you what, I hate the cowl and the ears
Yeah.
for this. And I know, like, before you all go, well, that's how he originally looked in the comics. His ears were more rounded. Yeah, I know, and it fucking sucks. Okay? So I fucking hate the ears, and because of that, I'm not going to watch it.
Tell us how you really feel.
Fix the ears. No, I'll probably check it out, but I'm going to be mad about the ears, and I'm never going to stop complaining about it. So
good.
Just be prepared for that.
That sounds like a
But I wish it success, because I'm Bruce Timm being involved, and Matt Reeves, and Paul Dini's not, is he? Did they ever mention his name? Is
no,
he
I haven't seen.
Right, I don't think he is
connected to this.
But yeah, I think obviously super amount of potential. But like you said, I agree with you. Like, I don't know that that's like people who have the subscription or that are big super nerdy fans like us, we're totally gonna fucking watch it on HBO Max if it's on there. But I don't know that that's getting new subscribers on there.
Exactly.
So yeah,
like it's one of those things that's there to help keep current subscribers, I'm sure, but it's not making anyone go, oh, that's I gotta spend $10 a month now just to get that.
Well, they can listen. They can make it, and they listen. They're trying to cut costs. They're trying to save money, so they can still make it and produce it. But then by selling it, and then getting maybe rerun and like all that stuff, like they probably can make it a much more lucrative project than like if we just aired it on the streamer where there's no ads and they're just kind of like going off like that subscriber number base and whatever like income they make from that, which I'm sure is no small penny. But this way they sell it out, they get money, and it probably like definitely offsets the cost a lot more than if they just put it on their own streamer. And then there's more money for Matt Reeves to play with when he makes the Batman 2.
There you go.
That's how it works, guys.
That's how it works.
101. You heard it here. You heard it here first.
So look, before we just totally get away from these shakeups at DC and what's going to be happening in the future, I just want to bring it all back to our guy Superman, because I feel like if this happens, if this moves forward and Dan Lin gets the job, and it's all in tandem with David Zaslav's 10-year plan and the team he's putting together to come up with that 10-year plan, I think this is all going to be looked back on as a turning point here for those of us who've been waiting to see what's going to happen with Superman on film. Because with these last few years, with all the different leadership, the different bosses who've come in with the different attempts at this or that, now it looks like we're actually charting a course for something. And we could be, within the next year or two on the on-ramp for a new Superman movie. Because listen, I don't know. I noticed that nowhere included in any of these articles is anyone talking about that Ta-Nehisi Coates Superman reboot. that
Right.
J.J. Abrams is going to produce. It just seems like I don't know what's going on with that, but I get a sense that once Dan Lin is installed and doing his thing, we're going to figure out pretty soon what Warner Brothers Discovery wants to do with Superman.
Yeah.
So
we should mention too, if I'm not mistaken, there was like another project or two that was not like Superman related that was being produced or made for HBO Max. There was like some sci-fi series and something else. And if I'm not mistaken, I think those were axed as well in the midst of all this stuff. So just interesting because like J.J. Abrams also, they spent a lot of money on him and gave him like a big first look deal, I think. He has like some big deal with Bad Robot and Warner Brothers. And apparently a couple of his other things are like not making the cut either. So it's like, I don't know. Yeah, what's going to happen? I mean, listen, at this point too, we don't even know. It wasn't announced, but it was highly rumored after Batgirl got canceled that Supergirl movie might get canceled. So we haven't heard anything about that either. That's another thing that could still be on the chopping block. I don't know. Especially with whatever they decide with Superman, I guess, I don't know.
Yeah. It's been like no mercy over there. There was also like basically like a massacre of their non-scripted shows. There was a report last week where all the people in the non-scripted HBO Max community, all the people who were, preparing the next seasons of their non-scripted shows just woke up to the bloodbath at like almost all the non-scripted stuff has been cut because Warner Brothers Discovery is like, listen, we have non-scripted on Discovery. We don't really need HBO to be making reality type shows and whatever,
They let a bunch of people go as well. I think they let like 60 or 70 people go in like the HBO Max department just on the streamer. They were just like, goodbye. Like,
So it's been like no mercy over there with the new ownership. And you know what else has been like no mercy? How's this for a segue? We're moving out of DC and into video games because this week Gamescom happened. And listen, I'm a big wrestling fan. I may eventually be able to continue the wrestling fanboy spinoff of this show. I got several episodes in and then life knocked me on my ass, but maybe with the return to form here in September, I'll be able to continue that show because boy, is there a lot to talk about over there with recent shakeups at WWE and AEW, but we're not doing that today. What we're doing today is talking about AEW Fight Forever. Because Brett, correct me if I'm wrong, even though you're not the biggest wrestling fan, you do wax nostalgic and have warm feelings for the N64 era wrestling games like WWF No Mercy. Am I right?
Yeah, WCW versus NWO, WCW versus NWO Revenge. Yeah. Then there was WrestleMania 2000, WrestleMania No Mercy.
You know it all. Yeah,
I know all of them. I loved like they had a great simplicity, but they were like just very fun and they gave you everything you wanted. They had like the intros, they had weapons, they had all the crazy matches, Hell in a Cell, table, and it was just like it was like you soft punch, a hard punch, and then like soft grapple, large grapple, and then you just did a direction and a button, and you could do all these cool moves, and there was like a strategy to it, like getting your spirit up when you can launch your special, and those games just got better and better, and then all of a sudden, like the Attitude Era came out, and I think Acclaim got the rights to the wrestling games, if not mistaken. So you had WWF Attitude, that game came out, and then they started messing with the controls, and like it got more janky and they tried to make it more real, but it just
came in with the Raw versus SmackDown series, and then the 2K thing happened. And listen, I own a lot of those WWE games, but they've become a lot more complicated and a lot more of like sports simulation style, which is fine. Yeah. But AEW Fight Forever is it's going to be like this arcade style pick up and play easy, it's one of those things where like just like the No Mercy, where like yes, you can learn the basic controls in 30 seconds and do all right for yourself, but the more you do it and you get better with the timing and you can become like a master, almost like Smash Brothers too, right? Where it's like
I love that. You could play Smash easy Brothers. To play but like tough to master, like,
exactly,
and you could really like get into the depth of it. It's fun.
And Kenny Omega has been over. He's one of their top wrestlers over there at AEW. I don't know how connected you are to that, but he's also a hardcore gamer, and he's been like spearheading this project for the last 2 years. And Tony Khan is said to have invested like $20 million into this game or something like that. And Yeah, there's been all kinds of expectations. We've seen very little until this week when there was a nice 10-minute glimpse of like a full match between Kenny Omega and Adam Cole, as well as some other clips. And we finally got to see the wrestlers in action, what the combat's going to look and feel like. And Brett, the little stamina bar in the bottom is right out of
Yes.
No Mercy and all that
Yep.
stuff. And it really looks like the modern expansion of those games, the new version of that. And I can't wait. Like, it's going to have the online components. I'm like, to be able to play a game that's in that style, but like with my friends online and create other wrestlers along the way. Like, that to me sounds like
Yeah, we
a
get all
whole
the
bunch
quality
of
of life
awesomeness.
improvements of 2022,
Yeah.
2023, whenever this
But
game
with
comes
an
out.
addictive wrestling game like
Yeah.
that. And then on top of that too, like, it doesn't just look like it, it's going to be developed or released by Ukes, the
Yeah,
same
which is
one
like
who,
they were the original developers of WCW for NWO.
yeah,
THQ published those games,
yeah,
but Ukes was the actual developer, and
yeah,
they were also the developer. If I'm not mistaken, they were on not the most recent one, but most of the previous 2K
yeah,
WWE
they
games.
were,
But then there was like apparently they were developing a separate game. There's a little interesting story. They were developing another game, wrestling game on the side from the WWE games, and apparently WWE got angry and like fired them off of it, and another
what?
studio had to take over the new 2K the 2K series. So if
Yeah,
I'm not mistaken, they skipped a year last year, and because also like 2 years ago it was just like a disaster. Like Ukes, like it wasn't even their fault. Like it was just like an engine that just
yeah,
they
the
kept using year after
2K20.
year. They had to pump it out. They didn't have enough time. They couldn't make the upgrades and like really. And then eventually, I think 2K20 was like a disaster. So if I'm not mistaken, they took 2K21. They
Yeah,
just didn't even make one,
yep,
and they had a new developer. And now Ukes has been working on this AEW game.
yep,
So yeah, I mean, if it really can capture, if it feels and plays good, it'll be good. Because I mean, just from the look right now, I know it's probably still got some more polishing to do. It's a little janky looking. It doesn't quite look like a PS5 or an Xbox Series XS game.
yeah,
Listen, they're not going to have the budget that 2K gives for the thing. Not at
yeah,
least right away. If this one's successful, you can bet they'll probably be able to beef it up. But as long as it feels good, I can deal with like the models looking a little not completely up to par. If
yeah,
gameplay is king, so if
yep,
they can capture that and they have like just like enough modes and things to keep you engaged, and hopefully they have like a plan for like updates, either adding new characters,
yeah,
new rings, that's going to be the thing. Because just from a gamer perspective, that's been the biggest trouble with games as of late. Is like a lot of these games come out, not even multiplayer games, but like sports games, and they're just releasing like very thin with like not a lot of modes. Like it's just
yeah,
like even like the most recent Mario sports games, which I love. I used to love Mario Golf, Mario Tennis. I picked up tennis and golf this year, and like I don't feel as drawn to keep playing them as I used to with the old ones. Like they came very feature light, and the
yeah,
updates they've had have just been kind of few and far between that really keep me engaged. So as long as it can launch, listen, man, I played not too long ago. I went to a friend's bachelor party in March earlier this year, and he had like one of those systems that just has like every old game on it, like from
okay,
NES
yeah,
through like PlayStation 1 or something like that. And we actually ended up playing No Mercy. And that honestly, like for a game, it had tag team match, Hell in a Cell, ladder match. I think there was like tables, ladders, chairs. Also, they
yeah,
had the where's the one where you have to grab the suitcase? Money in the
Money
Bag.
in the
What's it
Bank,
called?
yeah,
Money in the Bank.
Money in the
They
Bank,
had Money in the Bank. Money in the Bank. They had like a lot of like different things you could do. It
yeah,
was really cool. And you could customize all the modes. Take disqualification or the ring count off. You could take
yeah.
submissions off, TKOs off. Like it needs to have that. It can't just come out with like, okay, we have exhibition and Royal
Yeah, yeah,
Rumble and
yeah.
that's it.
Well,
It's
they promised a lot of modes, and they've even promised all kinds of match types, all kinds of because the AEW is kind of known for having some crazy match types, also even just on the
that's
show.
cool though. Then if
So
they're
they're gonna
gonna
have all kinds of
load.
match types, and they're even gonna have like mini games that aren't necessarily wrestling related stuff where you can.
I saw a
choose,
couple
like,
of those
you pick
today.
a wrestler, yeah, and it's mini games. So it
There's like
kind of
home
reminds
run
me of like.
derby things and like all this other
Yes,
weird stuff.
it
So
reminds me of when on the DS when they started re-releasing old Mario games, but they would be like a separate section for like you could like draw and he's bouncing on trampolines or these other little mini games that aren't part of that. So yeah, so there's going to be like little party style mini games you could do with the wrestlers too. So that could add a little extra value too as just a party multiplayer game, you know. So all in all, I was really glad with what I was happy with what I saw. They've announced a release date because that's always been the big thing for us AEW fans. Have been waiting for this freaking release date. They're saying it's like February 10th, 2023. All right. So we're going to have a little bit of a wait still, but it's coming. And now we apparently know when it's coming. So, and also coming out of Gamescom, the other game that caught my attention that was on my radar, there was a story trailer released for that Harry Potter Hogwarts Legacy game that's coming out. Did you get a chance to see that?
I did check that out. Yeah, so this game has definitely been on my radar since they announced it. I mean, there was like a leak like 2 years ago or something like that, and they finally made the announcement, I think, I don't know, within the last year or maybe like this past summer. There was like the first big, real good reveal at it. I mean, it looks great. You know, J.K. Rowling and all of her bullshit aside, it looks awesome. It's not really connected with her. The story trailer was cool today. Just gave a little insight to like what you're going to be dealing with. There was also another trailer that came out and I saw like clips of it, but they kind of outlined some interactions, and this story trailer was focused on this too. But if you are in the House Slytherin, you can interact with dark magic. And I believe there will be some gameplay, changes that happen, like if you invest too much in it or use it too much, it could actually hurt you or harm you or do things to you in the game. So it's really cool. It might be like I bet you probably get really powerful spells, but it might corrupt you in some way or like maybe keep you from doing other things. So I'm really excited what like the work they've done on like the actual like Hogwarts itself and like all the moving paintings and all the just weird, like that's such a fantastical, place and iconic place, like from the movies and all.
You got to do it right.
Way though, it's like a living, breathing castle, and it looks like they really got that part down. So it looks really cool. I'm not like by any means like I've seen all the movies. I haven't read the books. I'm not like a diehard Harry Potter fan. But no, it's just like a game like this where like you're mainly like using like magic and stuff, and that's a very cool world that was built. So yeah, I'm pretty pumped for this game. It's looking pretty groovy.
And look, Nissy, I am a Potter file.
And we did get a delay, by the way, too. It was supposed to come out, I think, like this year, and they pushed it. I think that's also coming out like February 10th or something now. It got pushed to February next year.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, well,
you are a big
Potter file. I read all 7 books. I read them as they came out. I was one of the people who had to like get it, when it came out. Wow. And I saw all 8 movies, and I got my kids into it. And my daughter has a Hogwarts like rug on her floor that my cousin actually made her by hand because he's very artistic and awesome like that.
Oh wow!
But yeah, so my daughter's big on it, and as soon as they announced this Hogwarts Legacy thing, I want to say like a year and a half ago now, whatever the teaser was, like we all sat around the TV and watched it on YouTube because I knew my kids would be into it. And they were like, this looks so cool. The whole idea of you could pick being good and bad, and it's like open world. So you get to just kind of like explore Hogwarts and do all the cool Harry Potter stuff, but you get to do it your way. You don't got to follow this one linear, path, or you got to just, follow all the beats of this book. That's one of the things I love about the story trailer, where it was like, it says something about like live the unwritten, because it's like, you're going off into like uncharted territories. This is not based on a book or a movie. You get to do you get to live your own Hogwarts adventure.
Well, it's also funny because when I read that quote, when they were like, live the unwritten, I was like, I feel like they're saying that because they want to be like, this is not any of the stuff that J.K. Rowling did. It's not any of the shit that she wrote.
As like, damn it,
I read that and I was like, they wanna keep the fuck away from that.
Like, forget who wrote this. That's really what they wanted to say. Like, how could we convey, forget who wrote this? And somebody in the room was like, live the unwritten. Yeah. And they got a bonus. But yes, so anyway, it looks like a lot of it sounds like a lot of fun, I should say. Now, having watched the story trailer and gotten more of a look at what kind of game we have in store for us here, to me it looks exquisite. The voice acting is top tier, the graphics look phenomenal, And it really looks like they're giving us like a deluxe gaming experience here, set in that magical wizarding world. It doesn't look
Yeah.
like a cheap cash in, and it doesn't seem like derivative or silly. It looks like, oh, this is a new expansion of this world, and now I get to go enjoy it my way.
Yeah,
So I'm
the world's
really,
going to do a lot for it. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like just the setting and being able to
yeah,
explore it in that level of detail and all the interconnected areas. Like that is what's cool. So like as long as they can just deliver like some gameplay and it's not a big buggy mess, which I'm sure is that's why they
yeah,
delayed it. They're probably like, yo, we got to. There's a lot of bugs here. There's a lot going on. We got to make sure this
yeah,
thing's polished, doesn't release looking like crap.
yep,
I think they probably don't even have to necessarily work that hard on the gameplay. Just make sure it could even be like it could feel like a million other games out there as long as it's solid because the world is going to do like 75% of the lifting for them. You
yeah.
know what I mean?
It's funny you mentioned that. There's this thing that it's going to sound unrelated, but I promise you it connects. There's this thing Jerry Seinfeld said many, many years ago when breaking down what makes a successful TV show or a successful movie, which is a lot of times it's about the place. And what he meant by that is there's like a show where, like with any show in general, it's about making the audience feel like, I like that place. I want to be there. It's not necessarily
Yeah.
about what the storyline is or what's going on. I like being in this place mentally. So anything that brings me there is cool, and that's why like
Right.
a lot of the best shows, you get hooked on it because, you like the place.
Yeah,
And I
everyone
feel
loves
like,
Jerry's apartment. You want to be in Jerry's apartment. It
yeah,
looks like
yeah,
such a homey place to hang out, and they're always
yeah.
there, and it looks so much fun.
Yeah. So for me, like, I think about that with this, where like I'm gonna want to play it just so I could like be in Hogwarts and explore being in Hogwarts. And the same way, like with Red Dead Redemption, with this
Right.
rich, lush world, like, yeah, there's a million things I could do, but I also just kind of get to ride around and feel like a cowboy in this like painting come to life that looks like real life.
Right.
I love a game that seems like it's going to transport you someplace. It's the same reason I loved
Right.
last year when I finally discovered Assassin's Creed Black Flag. And I'm like, wow, I feel like a pirate. Like, this is
Yeah.
amazing. I'm on a ship and they're singing legitimate pirate songs. And
Yeah.
here's John Silver and Blackbeard. Any game that it gives you that immersive thing where like now I'm in this place that I've always seen on movies or read about or whatever, and now I kind of get to like be in it in a way.
Yeah.
So that Hogwarts story trailer totally gave me those vibes where it's like I'm just going to be wandering around Hogwarts looking for secrets for a while. But okay,
Sounds great. That sounds
yeah,
awesome.
right. That's all I need. I'm going to do nothing but Easter eggs.
Yeah.
But now to kind of, bring everything back to movies by way of video games, why don't you tell everyone what's gone on with this BioShock movie, Brett?
Yeah. So a little story for y'all. So if you remember, a couple years back, maybe more than a couple of years back, Gore Verbinski, so director of
Mm-hmm.
the Pirates of the Caribbean. I don't know if he did every movie, but he did at least like the first two or
Yeah.
something like that. Big director,
Yeah.
Gore Verbinski. There's a
Oh,
lot
yeah.
of big projects. Okay, so he was attached to create a BioShock movie, which is pretty much a beloved series. That first game is tremendous, has one of like the coolest stories, really really neat twist, and just one of them. Talking about place, one of the most awesome, just cool places.
Yep.
And if you're an eagle-eyed viewer, you will notice my background is the underwater city of Rapture from BioShock. So anyway, Gore Verbinski was attached to this project, and as the story goes, apparently they were like a few weeks from filming, and I forgot what studio was going to produce it, but they looked at the budget and they were like, "Oh fuck, no, we can't sign off on this."
Oh,
They were like,
man.
"This is insane!" Like, but Gore Verbinski knew. He was like, "Well, I need like an Art Deco 1940s, 1950s looking city that fucking exists underwater." So you can imagine the amount of money for sets and CG to make that work. Not to mention like just the denizens and the costumes alone and the makeup and probably special effects if you played the
Yeah. And
game.
to do it right, that's an
You need to do that.
expensive show.
Well,
Yeah.
anyway, Netflix, apparently has like an infinite bank account, so they
Figured we
have
keep giving them our
actually,
$15 a month.
yeah. Now it's like $20 a month now because I have like
Yeah.
4K. So they charged me like 20.
Oh,
So
shit.
anyway, this is from Deadline too. So this is like a Deadline exclusive. It's like absolutely official. So we got some momentum on BioShock. So it has a director. So Francis Lawrence, who he was tapped, but Francis Lawrence directed the Hunger Games, I believe Catching Fire,
Mhm.
and he also returned. He's directing the prequel that is out yet, or no, it's coming out next year. The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. So he's involved with that series. Pretty successful franchise, big franchise. So obviously he knows how to handle that. And Michael Green is writing the script. Green, if I have it here, I just had it in front of me. What he wrote. So he worked on Jungle Cruise, Death on the Nile. But he also wrote like there was something else that was like a little more higher profile, and I'm not seeing it now. Oh well, we'll never know. Look him up. He's done some good stuff. There's
But he's
no way
done
to
some
ever
good
find out.
stuff. Okay.
He was involved in like 2 other shows or like movies that like actually were like I think a little more higher profile than Jungle Cruise and Death on the Nile. But anyway, so we got a writer, we have a director, so that's like a huge thing. Netflix is going to be producing this movie. We don't know at this point if they're going to do like a strict,
Yeah.
adaptation, whatever, or if they're going to change it. I don't know. But if you've never played BioShock, it is just one of the coolest games. Got one of the coolest vibes. Like I said, it's kind of like an alternate history. It takes place in our
Oh, you're
world, but
preaching
it's
to the
like
choir to me. Yeah,
yeah,
I played 1, 2, and Infinite.
yeah, so they're great. And the first one still probably remains the best one. But yeah, it's basically like this gentleman Andrew Ryan. He just had this dream of making like a city that was like unbound by like religion and red tape and politics, and allowing like science and discovery and exploration and research to just kind of like roam free and see like how we could advance ourselves and be a better people. So eventually, the way to get out of like all the red tape is like he's like, I'm going to build an underwater city where like you can't govern
Yeah,
over it, and
there's
we're going to
no
be like
rules
self-sufficient.
here. Yeah.
So, obviously a little stretch of the imagination, they build in this giant, massive underwater city. But again, it's like that beautiful, like if you've ever been to Radio City Music Hall, it's that very Art Deco style that you still
Yep.
see in New York City and stuff like that. But
And the
just,
music is
yeah,
very
the
from
music
the
tremendous.
40s and
And it turns into you find out basically the city was built, and then like all the things that he wanted to happen happened, but obviously when you let that stuff run unchecked, something's going to go wrong. And
yep, and
people
lots
start
of
getting a little too involved with gene splicing and manipulating their bodies and stuff, and it starts driving some people insane. And then eventually there's like a big civil war like outbreak, and the city kind of collapses, and like all these different areas start getting like ruled by different people. Basically, like there's like little I don't want to call them gangs, but like what do you call it, like little like cults and stuff like built
yeah.
out, and they're like taking over certain sections of the city. And yeah, like the whole thing is that like you're there's some random guy, you don't really know who you are yet, but you get sent down there. There's a mysterious voice talking
Well,
to you,
no,
telling you
the
what to
first
do.
one, if I'm not mistaken, the first one opens with it's like a plane crash. You're
Yeah, there's
floating at sea.
yeah,
So your plane has crashed at sea and you're floating around and you think you're going to die,
and you find the
but you
lighthouse.
realize, yeah, you
Yeah,
find a lighthouse and then it brings you down into rapture. So I
right.
feel like that, and that's like the narrative hook. I feel like you could base a show on that. That your main character is like the fish out of water who doesn't belong here but ends up here and
Well, the
has to now
story's perfect.
survive.
Yeah, you do
Yeah,
that,
it's
and that's like the
freaking
suspense. And
amazing.
then there's a, I mean, not to, and listen, the game's in 2007, so like, I
Yeah.
mean, come on. But I won't like do crazy spoilers. But like, there's like a big twist like in the middle of it, related to who the character is and connections, and it's very cool, and it even works on like a meta level as like a player playing the game. It kind of does like this really cool thing where it puts a spin on your own agency as a player, and it's really neat. But yeah, just a tremendous cool game, and it's a very sci-fi, very horror
Yes. That's what I
element
like.
to it. So I
Yeah.
think like just the tone. So hopefully they nail that, because yeah, it blends sci-fi and horror so well. It's
Yeah.
very cool. So I am super excited that this looks like this might actually happen now. So
Yeah.
fingers crossed that it actually takes place, and that it's done well, and they don't do like some weird shit like they did with like the Resident Evil movies,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
that was
Yeah.
no
Just do it
good.
right.
Do it right.
Copy the tone of the first movie,
Yeah.
the look and feel and story of the first game. Like the look and feel and tone of that first game is just it would make for a great movie. And it
Yeah.
was just perfect. It was just perfect.
I should mention while we're actually just talking about video game adaptions, there was finally HBO released like a little trailer of some of their upcoming shows that are coming like next year,
Oh, The
and there
Last of
was
Us.
like a small
Oh, I
snippet
missed it.
of The
Okay.
Last of Us, and that it looks like, I'm honestly like literally it's like 5 seconds probably. It's like 4 scenes and you see Pedro Pascal actually speak, and it looks like that we know for a fact because the creator is actually involved with the show, is pretty much going to be like a like faithful adaptation of the game.
Yeah, like a
I said they said they're going to
one-to-one.
maybe
Yeah.
change and remix some elements, but for the most part it's going to be like that story.
Wow.
So yeah, so like I'm very curious, like if that when that comes out next year, if it is received well, and the people, the powers that be, can see like, hey, if we just fucking adapt the story and find what makes it special in the first place and just adapt that, it works.
Yeah.
Hopefully they that will be a lesson that the people involved with BioShock can be like, yeah, we got to stick to this and not really shade it, because look, they did it the right way and it's a huge success. I really cannot wait for that series, just because
Yeah.
I'm excited for people who have never played the game to experience that story. And I'm curious how it's going to pan out, because as amazing as the story is, I still think it's going to work on TV. But there is like a small little element that you lose, because there's a cool thing in that too, that is a narrative thing that also gets super meta contextual. No, I'm kidding. It gets super meta though, and it does kind of fuck with you as the player. I think I've documented several times that like after beating The Last of Us 1, I was like fucked up for like a week, like mentally, like just like rethinking my existence and my life, because like I was like, what did they just do to me? Like they somehow like pulled me in and involved me in some of the choices that the game made that I didn't realize I was making, and it's not like a fourth wall thing. It just fucking makes you think. It's really
Yeah.
cool. So, and BioShock has that moment as well. And those are two of my favorite games. So
Yeah.
really excited, man. And we're gonna be eating good, man.
We're going to be eating real good.
We're gonna be
And
eating good.
I think that about does it here for episode 161 of the Fanboy Podcast.
Me too.
Before we wrap up, I just want to remind everyone that we've got the Fanboy Podcast at gmail.com to send in your questions. We've got a bunch stored up, ready to go. Thank you, Eugene and company, who've been
Yes.
sending in such good things. When we have our first Ask the Fanboys episode of the show ready for you, we'll let you know. And also follow us over on the Twitter at the Fanboy Show. Subscribe to the show over on YouTube. Subscribe to it on your podcast catchers of choice. And of course, be like RB80 and leave us reviews for us to read here on the air.
Yes,
and share
please.
our utmost appreciation for your appreciation for this here show. And all right, Brett, did you have any closing words for anyone today?
The only thing I can think of is that we should maybe be kind.
Oh, you want to do that thing? All right. And
Yeah.
how about if we also stay fanboy?
We could. I don't think the grammar or the English is proper on that at all, but I like it.
All right, everyone, you heard it here. Be kind and stay fanboy. Adios.
So long.